Heir with the Mama Tried Show.
My name is Scott Johnson, and we're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Warren and I met through mutual friends.
Yeah, as friends slash work professional thing. I was working for a guy in Milwaukee building shit for Scott's Restaurants through this other guy, and we just kind of met and started hanging out, riding bikes, and one thing led to another, and he's like, hey dude, let's do a motorcycle show, and told him to get fucked.
He did.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
Just because I was jaded and didn't want to deal with it. I was raised in that world down in northern Illinois, and just super tough.
And his idea of a motorcycle show and my idea of a motorcycle show were totally different.
I'm like the isolated or whatever suburban kid going to motorcycle shows in suburbia, and Scott over here is much more cultured.
I did not even. Well, I just didn't have. He's like full on like Harley kid. Like his dad builds motors, still does. Grew up in a Harley shop. My world was totally not that. It was metric and dirt bikes and armor racing and that kind of thing. So it's like we had totally different worlds that we were in. But we would just pepper each other with questions whenever we were hanging out. So when I said let's do a motorcycle show, I was like, I want to do a show that it was curated, that we invite the kind of the kind of bikes.
I instantly went to thinking about exposition center,
like at State Fair Park or some shit.
Like weird sunglasses and shitty leather stuff for sale.
People selling socks.
And bike shows where anybody can bring anything, and you just walk by and you're like, oh my god.
Because in Rockerbox was that in a little bit. That was a show that we did from 2003 till 2013, and I did it with Tim from the shop and a couple other guys. There's a couple things about that show that was cool. If we could deviate for just a second, like it was cool to do it in River West. Was like the only place you could do something like that. It was on Center Street by the Old Fuel. Old Fuel started in '93, and I was into bikes and mostly cafe racer kind of stuff. And Fuel started out as like kind of a punky, anarchy kind of place in the 90s. So alternative music and, the whole coffee, like espresso, generation of like, coffee shops really started to come up. We were part of that. And so my thing was motorcycles. And so we just started putting motorcycle pictures up and racing pictures from my friends. And we would have like small bike events. So that's kind of how it started. And then we started the street show with a couple guys who were like, let's do an outdoor thing. So we did that, and we had a really hard time getting it going. It took years and years before it even started. And then once it got going, then it was just like fucking horses have left the barn. It was like you just couldn't. It was just like it just got. Yeah, and as a business owner who didn't have a pot to piss in, I was just freaking out that someone was gonna get hurt and we were gonna get sued. So then it was like it just got so crazy, and we had a lot of fun. I was like, all right, we just can't do this anymore.
I was still pretty young moving to Milwaukee and going to that show, and I was blown away. It was wild. That was cool, and I just couldn't put two and two together to figure it out.
And I was like, I loved the party part of it, but there was like, as far as what bikes were being brought, it was like I liked about 1/10 of what was there. So I really wanted to do something that would showcase that you could have a motorcycle and you would look at it and you could stand around and like each bike was there for a reason. It wasn't some guy just rolled it in off the street. Which was cool. That was a very cool thing. It was a lot of fun, and we had a blast with it. And it was great having everybody who brought all the weirdo stuff that they brought and partied their fucking tits off. And you do it for a while. Nothing lasts forever. So, and that's why I was like, because I really liked the stuff that Warren and his buddies were bringing. I was like, what about this? And like, what about hardtails? And like, how do you ride that? And he was asking about flat track stuff and racing stuff, and we just kept, and that's why I was like, let's do an indoor show. And you're like, no way. And I was like, no, let's do it like a cool thing. Like you can invite the kind of shit that you want to invite, and we both kind of realize that we like the same kind of stuff. Why do we want to do winter? Well, there's a million reasons. Like, first of all, a lot of people just have a lot of downtime in the winter to take stuff apart and get ready for the race season, because we want to have a lot of race bikes at the show. So it's like that's a time when people they don't have a full race season. If you had it in the summer, it's hard to get people with road race bikes or flat track bikes or hill climbers because they got their schedule and they're not gonna, their weekends are pretty much, they're all planned out and they're accounted for. So it's like to throw another event in there. I mean, you know what it's like in the summer. It's like there's fucking 18 things on any given day that you want to go to.
If you have an outdoor show or even an indoor show in summer, it's better in the parking lot than it is inside. So we can capture more attention and curate it and have more control over the situation than what we could in a summertime show. The first year was at the old candy factory next to Iron Horse. I knew Tim Dixon, who owns Iron Horse, and he just offered it up. He's like, oh yeah, you guys go do your little motorcycle show in this building. None of us had any idea what was going to happen, and it blew up from the get-go.
We didn't think it was going to be anything more than just like, we didn't think it was going to be an annual thing. It was just going to let's just do like a thing and just see what happens in this like cool, like abandoned space. We had construction lights strung up and like the bathrooms weren't working and no permits, it was like, fuck, is this even going to fucking happen? And we just figured, a couple hundred people would show up and we'd look at some cool stuff. But then a lot of people turned up and it was fine. It was great. It was a really, really good time. Right. We had a lot of great people come in from all over the country. And that's kind of how it started. And then, but that was, we knew going into it that, a year later, 6 months later, those were going to be apartments.
We tried to get that space again. Why, I don't understand. I don't know the logic behind it, just being dumb. And that obviously didn't work out and fell through and started a string of like scenarios that happened every single year. Like, we don't have a space to have a building, to have a show, and everything is set up and everything is coming. We're talking like a month before the show.
And we're still have space,
So that's why we moved around a lot, is because we just kept getting booted, or like place would get rented, or
like someone would say like, yeah, you can use my building, and then like a month before the show they'd be like, oh fuck, yeah, I rented it, can you guys find a different space? You're like, pfft.
So we met Angela Warren, who took us over, who was involved with
the Second Street building.
Second Street.
You're right.
Lindsay building. Yeah, Lindsay building. But talk about moving mountains to try to make that place just to get the city to allow us to do anything in there was so stressful. I mean, it was insane.
So many meetings and like so many inspections and all this stuff. And the landlord was like pretty good about it, but it was like everything was like a thing. And so we really had to.
It was a lot.
It was a lot of work, a lot of stress. It didn't even know if it was going to happen until like the very, 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 very last minute.
Yeah, and the same year that we did the rave show for the first time, we were trying the same thing. It was a Hail Mary to the rave. I straight up cold called the rave because
it was like 3 weeks out or something.
Yeah, we had nowhere to go.
Because we were going to do it at the Second Street building, at the Lindsay building, and the city inspectors had been saying like, you guys gotta get this, you gotta put in new bathrooms. I've been telling you for 2 years, you gotta do all this stuff. And I was like, well, we don't own the building. He's like, well, I've been telling the landlord, dude, And he's like, I'm not bullshitting you. Like, you gotta actually, like, you actually gotta do this stuff. But we were like, fuck, what are we gonna do? Yeah, Warren called the rave.
They they were basically hung up on me. We cold called. We were just sitting there like, I'll call them.
Like, yeah, anyone. There was like a pick and save that was like gonna be turned into a school, and there was nothing in it but just like a bunch of shelves and fluorescent lights, and we almost got that. But then the same thing, the city inspector's like, fuck you guys.
So a mutual friend, we had been working with with Mama Tried selling beer. He was our beer rep, and he knew the guys at the rave. And we were talking to him because we were just like, we didn't know what to do. We were just reaching out to anybody. He's like, oh, I'll go in. I'll go talk to Joe. I'm like, okay, whatever. Next day, we were in there. We walked in for a meeting, and Dave walked out, and he gave us a smile and thumbs up. Shit. So it just fell into place. Lucky. And I mean, to be honest, there's not like, where else do we do it in Milwaukee? I'll quit. I'll cancel the show before I bring it to State Fair.
And everybody who works there was like super helpful and great, and it was a hustle to get it all moved over there, the first year had hiccups, the lighting wasn't really great. I mean, it's a concert hall, it was never meant to have the lights on. It's just only supposed to be like dark for shows. before we get into the hard stuff, but one of the easiest things is getting motorcycles for the show is like, just when you think you've seen every cool bike in the Midwest or heard of it, it's endless.
Yeah.
And the amount of cool stuff that we get to find on Instagram or at other shows or going on rides, or that people send in through submissions, or like, hey, my buddy was gonna send this in, but he doesn't know if he should, like, what do you think of it? Like that kind of stuff. There's so much rad shit.
Yeah, and everybody's down.
It's amazing.
Like you reach out by Instagram or email or phone, however you go about it, and everybody's like, hell yeah. I've never gotten a no, like a direct no, I'm not interested. Everybody just it tries like.
Sometimes people can't do it because they can't get off of work, or you know it's just too far of a journey, or they already got something planned that weekend, you know, and they can't get out of it. But that's the easy part. The harder part is
trying to be creative.
Yeah.
Like staying out ahead of the curve a little bit and try to be different out of the box, kind of, you know, and make it so that when everybody spends their hard-earned money to come hang out with us, that they have a good time and they go home and they tell their friends or whatever. I think
making them feel welcome so that they continue. More people will say yes when we ask them if they want to come, and making a good time. So yeah, when they go home after the weekend, they're just like, man, I had the best fucking time in Milwaukee in the middle of winter.
Trying to keep everybody positive and upbeat in the world that we live in is hard.
And especially after we got our ass kicked in 2020, you know, and I mean, everyone did, but it was tough for us because we had, you know, you load up all this marketing and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, like the day before, you're like, you can't do it, and you just like, fuck, it just fucks everything up. And so many people had traveled, you know, it was just the worst confluence of timing.
We consciously decided that because we had a show in 21 in December, which is basically 9 months away from when we normally do it, we're already under the gun. So we decided, or there was a question, it's like, we either do it in 22 really quick because we don't want to be in December, we want to be in February, really, March.
Yeah, we don't want December to be the new date, annual date of the show.
So we either don't do it in 22 and do it in 23, or just say, fuck it, go for it. Get back on the schedule, grab it, and then run to 23 and get back to normal. And that's the decision we made. And we're gonna live or die by it.
Because we had to make that decision like a year ago.
Yeah.
More than a year ago.
Yeah.
Because all that stuff really is dependent on Fiserv.
Yep. Flat Out Friday came about because of Jeremy Prock. These two had a relationship years back, and he popped up and wanted to do a race because his son was flat tracking, and he has this urge to just want to promote anything and everything. And
he runs a hockey league. He runs 24-hour bike race.
Game, like he used to do video game leagues at the bar. Like
he's just like, if there's something to organize, he wants to organize it. You know, that's just Jeremy, and the more people involved and the more moving parts involved, like the better. He loves the chaos. He had been talking about wanting to do an indoor flat track race, like even before Mama Tried. So when Mama Tried started after the second year, he was like, I really want to do this race.
So then we started looking for arenas, which is crazy. There's a pecking order at all these arenas, and we're not in first position.
Or second.
Right, so we basically say, hey, listen, we want every Friday in February, March. And let's just take April just in case, right? And then you have to wait for the NBA schedule to come out. You have to wait for the NBA to pick their whatevers, their days, and just take what comes and just roll the dice.
I don't know how the syrup race thing came about.
He brought it to us.
Yeah.
So back in the 70s, they used to run indoor events and sprint car stuff, like smaller vehicle, four-wheel vehicles. And they'd also run dirt bikes and four-wheelers and stuff on it. and then it evolved into flat tracking. But it's just a light coating of Dr. Pepper syrup on the ground, on the straight, flat concrete ground, and ride really fast in a circle.
And there's a bit of an art to it. You can't just, it's just like being in a movie theater.
Don't you wear secrets?
No. But you know, like in a movie theater when you're in a really dirty movie theater, like that's the least amount you can get away with, the better.
You go to a lot of shows, you always see the same people, but this time I think it's going to be a little fresh. There's new vendors and new sponsors and stuff coming in, and I'm excited. The bikes, man, we're overbooked on bikes. We screwed that up.
God.
Yeah, there's not enough room on that floor. I gotta figure out.
We always just think that there's more room than there is. Like we always, because we get so stoked, we're like, yeah, bring that, and we're kind of doing it separate, right? So he's got his circle of people and stuff that, you know, bikes that he's crushing on, and I have mine. There's a bit of a formula. I feel like
I think the formula is simple. Is just don't have a bunch of one type of bike.
Yeah.
You know, but again, we don't plan it really. I mean, I couldn't tell you. There's 96 bikes on the list for 22. I couldn't tell you how many Harleys. I couldn't tell you how many choppers. What I really should pay attention to is how many long bikes don't fit in the elevator, so I don't have to carry them up the fucking stairs.
But we try to do, you know, we both really like competition bikes a lot, and we both like choppers. We try to get a balance between like American stuff and like metric, antique, restoration, competition stuff.
Just plain weird.
Yeah, weird random stuff.
Mini bikes.
Motocross.
For me, it's very, very socially driven, and the only way that a lot of those things happen is by happenstance or by actual conversations or meeting or friends that I know that I enjoy, recommend. This, you should hit up this guy. He's got a rad bike, but he's also a rad dude.
Like, there's great bikes. The bikes are awesome. But you also kind of have to be like a good person and like a friendly person and like you don't have to be an outgoing person. You could show up and not even ever come to the show, but there has to be something about you and what you do that is extra in some way, right? Like, so your bike's really rad, that's cool. But if you're like, you know,
we could easily go out and pick the biggest names and invite them, right? But there's no soul to that. There's a lot of bikes out there on pedestals that a lot of folks would not put in the show bike category, right? Like, that's just the way it is, and that's because it's the way Mama Tried is like that because of the people. It's like, that bike is rad because that person is fucking cool. Yeah, we're not. I mean, it's somewhat organized, but it's still really loose. You know, it's. If we organize it more, I think it would take away from
all the fun out of it.
Yeah, and like it would be too organized, right? Like, I have no idea what bikes are coming, and I don't think he does either until it shows up. And half the time, I don't even know whose bike that is, and I don't remember because maybe he did it, invited, or I invited him, and I'm like,
this thing's cool. Who invited that? And he's like, I didn't. And I was like, oh, that's right, I did. But it's the best part of it is like when all the bikes get loaded in and you're walking through, even before they're like set. Well, when they're set up, like on Friday night, that's like right before we go to Flat Out Friday. Like Friday afternoon, we sort of try to get them all in place, and you're like, that's pretty cool.
Sure, there's some bikes that we pick on purpose to be in the center and like whatever, but then really it's just fucking random because it's. Everybody wants to go to the race, and we're like, fuck it, just start rolling them up, roll them on, and then they'll all get set up, and they're like, okay, move this one and that one and this one, and move that one over, and then okay, let's get out of here.
The race is starting, like, let's go.
Yeah. We want to go international, travel, and because we've met folks that have come to our show from different countries, and are amazing people, and have made great friendships. We want to take what we have and go and immerse ourselves into their culture,
in their world,
and like have some fun outside of Milwaukee, and then create this little world where every March or February everybody comes back to Milwaukee and we talk about the year. And
I don't know. I mean, we both know that like nothing lasts forever, But we're having a good time with it now, and the travel thing is really what we want to do. Because that's where we get the most fun, where we have the most fun.
If we can definitely, we can travel. So if we can figure out how to work that into the situation and get it done, that's where I'm headed.
Yeah.